Hello and welcome back to the New York Young Republican Club podcast. My name is Mario J. Nicoletto. I am your campaigns chairman for the New York Young Republican Club, and we have two outstanding guests joining us. Firstly, we have Navy veteran, NYPD detective, K-9 handler, and candidate for the New York State Senate, District 26, Tom Stanten is here. Tom, how are you?
All right, how you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm doing very good. And then we also have who many call the paramilitary commander of the NYYRC. Many call him the transplant in chief. I just call him Troy Olson, our sergeant at arms, Troy Olson. How are you, man?
Pretty good. How are you?
Doing okay. We have a lot to go over. And I want to begin with you, Tom, because you have quite the resume.
Thank you.
And, can you tell us a little more about, obviously you're running for state Senate. And as we've established, you're a Navy veteran. You're a small business owner. I forgot to mention that. And you were with the NYPD for a significant amount of time. What compelled you to run for state Senate?
I've been involved in community and politics since I was about 15 or 16. I could recall back in high school, there was an uplift of teen suicide prevention in my area. And I got involved with my sister. And we went out there and tried to uplift the community and bring people together and make events and try and change people and make sure that people that had some depression had a more positive look on things.
Right. So, and I see that being transferred over,
Mhm.
kind of like a life of service, if you will.
Yes.
Almost like a life of service where you're doing selflessly many things, not for you, but for the betterment of other people, the betterment of the country and of the city that may be. Talk to me a little bit about little Tom Stanton, right? You're growing up, your upbringing. I know you were in Manhattan. How did that
I had a great opportunity. I grew up both in Manhattan on Upper East Side, as well as in Connecticut. Monday through Sunday evening to Thursday, we would definitely be in Connecticut. And then we would come back into Manhattan. I was born in Manhattan. I loved the neighborhood. And I was able to work and understand both suburban life and city life. And that's what I think really gave me a shot in life, because I was able to understand everybody.
Right. Troy, you have a kind of a similar background where you understand kind of the rural, suburban.
I guess we could swap out the Navy for the Army vet. Was never a police officer, but I have deep respect for police officers, especially in this city. Rather than suburban city, I'm rural small town and city, which is, I think, an even bigger jump in a lot of ways. I would say the suburban community is maybe the one I know the least. I only know it through political campaigning. Actually, never lived in a suburban community, but I've been in a lot of suburban communities that are great. And so yeah, and then I'll go Army, beat Navy. And other than that, though, very similar background.
No offense, Tom.
Yeah,
Okay.
I
do go to West Point games every year.
Oh, okay.
I do host the bus out there.
I've never been.
A few times I've had my Navy hat on and get a little flack in the beginning, but then everybody loves me afterwards.
What a great American tradition that is. And I've actually never been to a game up in West Point. I need to change.
We'll bring you.
You're going to join our American Legion.
Yeah.
And you're going to go next year.
Yes.
You got to get on that bus with us. We have a great Greek barbecue up there.
Oh, wow.
So it's a great time. And we talk to many different veterans up there and get to know everybody up there every year. It's a great turnout.
I love it. Well, I want to pull it back because you're running for state Senate in Brooklyn. And that is, in most cases, very challenging. This is due, in my view, to essentially the takeover of the Democrat Party and of the institutions of New York City from the Democratic Socialists, I would just call them communists, call them what they are, and of Zohran Mamdani. Earlier this week, I think it was yesterday or maybe it was 2 days ago, Politico put an article out about Democrats in New York City having to either get the boot or shift their stances farther to the left.
Right.
And what I'm seeing in Brooklyn, because I live in your district, I live in Bay Ridge, and I'm sure you see it in Manhattan and Harlem, is the death of the moderate Democrat, the death of the establishmentarian Democrat, Democrats from the 1990s, not literally, but these people flocked to Trump in droves in 2024. They flocked to him in droves in 2016 and even in 2020 to a smaller extent. You know, I guess, Troy, I'll begin with you because we had a lot to talk about this. We talked about this a lot, rather. The death of the moderate Democrat, how is it progressing? How is Mamdani affecting it? And how can we capitalize on those gains?
Yeah, I think I'll first start with Trump. I think Trump resorted a lot of Americans into where they actually believe. Like, I think a lot of people vote for things they don't necessarily believe in, either out of family heritage or friend social groups. And you're kind of, I think what Trump did is he woke up the country from coast to coast, and it was a great resorting. And I think Mamdani is a second part of that resorting. And 2/3 of the realignment, I think, all along has been what Democrats are doing. And only 1/3, I think, has been what Republicans are doing. So Republicans are changing stances, yes, but we're also just kind of grabbing former Democrats that are being repulsed. So I think Mamdani is now doing that, which is great for us. But I'll point out that not every Republican thinks this is a great thing. How could you? Because what Senator Cruz said recently on an appearance is totally right. As a patriotic American, you don't want that to be your opposition party. You don't want two parties. You want two healthy parties. You don't want every election to seem like an existential final battle. But if the opposing parties become communists, that's what it becomes. But I think Mamdani will push a ton of Democrats into the Republican Party. I think that will happen nationally. How much will it happen locally? I'm not prepared to answer that yet. I'd like to think that there are a ton of moderate Democrats in New York City reconsidering their political allegiances. And the question is, I think there's always been a lot more Republicans than the numbers say. And we know this because Trump got 36% of the vote in the 24 election. But if you look at registration, it's not that close.
It's nowhere close to there.
So there's clearly a lot of people that strategically stay Democrat to vote and affect that primary, so they have a say in the local and state elections.
Can you see them moving to the Republican column?
I think they need to, because I think if their strategy, which at one time I could respect, I get it. You want to have a say in who the next mayor will be, etc. But I think that strategy has come to an end, and now it's time to, if you've been voting Republican at the presidential level for a decade or so anyway, it's time to realign. If you have gripes about who Republicans nominated, last time out or this time out or whatever, well, you actually can affect a Republican primary through that realignment a lot more than you can sticking in the Democrat primary. And I actually think that if we go specifically to the 25 Democrat primary, and there's maybe some that look at 25, Zohran winning was a fluke. I actually think Adams winning was the fluke. I think Zohran Mamdani is the conclusion of what transplants and foreigners have been bringing to this city for a decade. It was always going to end up there, whether it was him or someone else. You could see all the precursors to that. And the only real reason it didn't happen in 21 was that was the first time out of ranked choice voting, and they hadn't kind of figured how to game theory that out yet. And now that they have, they're not going to we talked earlier about, what if we go to California's election system where it's blanket nonpartisan primaries? I don't see that happening, because I don't think Democrats will want to let anyone in there now that the DSA communists have a stranglehold on this party. I mean, when is the last time a communist has ever allowed people to vote their way out of anything? They're not going to let that happen. That's why that wasn't on the Charter Reform Commission, and it won't be advanced.
Right. And then, when it comes to Mamdani and his cronies, like, let's not forget about everyone that won their Democratic primaries a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
Let's not forget about
at the congressional level.
At the congressional level, and in Denver in the congressional level. It's not just relegated to New York
but it's relegated to major cities. It's going
by
nowhere
far and
else.
large, yes.
Yeah,
but those major cities now, those moderate Democrat populations, and we see many of these people in Brooklyn who they are a Democrat. They're pro-life, they're Christian, But I don't know. We don't like Trump or whatever. Or, I'm a Democrat, but I don't like that ICE is doing X, Y, or Z, right? We won't get into ICE, but the simple fact of the matter is Zohran Mamdani is so radical for so many people, for so many different demographics, that he's going to naturally shift Democrats, if not to the Republican Party, to the, I'll call it like the independent-minded coalition, where
The
it's
swing voter.
the swing vote. And
Space.
Tom, that's actually what he was saying before. Tom, how do you see Zohran helping or hurting in these elections this year?
Well, I'm really happy with bringing people together right into the center. When I was a child living in Manhattan, I had to take my bat on cold days and hit the pipes to tell because we had the oil crisis, and we had to let the supernote to bring up the heat, and that was a time period that was quite hard. And where I coming into the Republican Party was I was told by my mother explained to me about lower taxes, and also that we need to help in our direction to be strong, because World War III was always in our back of our mind.
Right.
And that's where my thoughts, when communism start coming in my head, nuclear bombs, because I come from this generation that they were all scared. They were running under tables, drills in schools and stuff like that. So, and right away I get scared to see us go into a more socialistic level. Socialism is good for the fact of medicine, like with the VA hospital. That's more of a socialistic view. But as we're growing now, I'm seeing extremes today.
Yeah.
And it's hurtful, because you're seeing hate on both sides and division. And I do think that comes from the Democrat Party, the division. We're all accepting, and that's why we have the swing voter that's coming over to our side, and also more as an independent voter, or maybe they'll vote conservative on a conservative line.
Right, or a third party line.
Because they might refuse to vote on the Republican line. But I really feel that as we grow in this community today, we're going to see in the upcoming months and years what direction this mayor is going to go. And could it be good or bad? We got to see. And right now, I'm concerned about our community. I love the city, and I love the people around us.
That's very fair. And one of the things I like the most about your literature and your posters, there is no Republican, there is no conservative on it. It just says community focused.
Yes.
And that's kind of the battle we're at now. I mentioned this, I believe it was Chairman McCabe 2 weeks ago, might have been with Assemblyman Chang last week. But this is less a battle of left versus right or Republican versus Democrat. It's more a battle of community focused,
Yes.
of common sense versus outright call them
Safety.
Safety, exactly. Safety versus anarchy, affordability versus lack thereof, education or ignorance. This is a choice that we're making. It's either the DSA communist lunatics, quite frankly, or the common sense folks like yourself. And that's where the divide is coming from right now. We're not looking at Bill Clinton versus who ran against him in 92 and 94. Who was that?
Well, in 92, he faced incumbent President Bush, and in 96,
Bob
he
Dole.
was Bob
We're
Dole.
not looking at Dole, right? We're looking at Zohran Mamdani, and
Can I add something?
of course,
It's the left. The left right now, they are trying. They'll tell you what to do. Where a center road person,
a moderate.
a moderate, wants to. I want to serve that. I want to serve everybody. Where versus that, the decisions are coming up high and telling us what we need here. I want to make our conveniences in our neighborhoods safer. Safe for our children to walk on the street. Right to believe in our own religions, and also how to clean our neighborhood up together.
Right. No, exactly. And it's difficult to get that message across in many cases when you have a district such as yours. You know, I've campaigned with you. I know a lot of our members have campaigned with you. You are an endorsed member of the New York Young Republican Club, endorsed candidate, I should say. So we spent some time there. Bay Ridge, Dyker Heights, pretty conservative. You know, you go up to Sunset Park, it's pretty liberal. Go up to Dumbo, it's very liberal. You know, how do you see yourself getting across these messages to people that have probably never had a Republican knock on their door before? How can the common sense, moderate, middle of the road people get the message to these Democrats that have never had a Republican knock on their door?
I'm having a good direction with it. When I got out of the Navy, I lived in Bensonhurst and went in the Navy, came back, moved to Sunset Park. And I lived in that community. And as well as when I was a child, the Upper East Side, when it started, wasn't the Upper East Side of today.
Yeah.
And it was a working class neighborhood. And I bordered right on Spanish Harlem. And it also was a little Italian over there as well, a little pocket of Little Italy type of thing. And I always approach people and tell them what's in my heart and be honest. And that's what it's about, not hiding behind different types of standards that are not going to go in a direction of fairness to everybody.
Right. And Troy, can you expand on that a little bit about the Common Sense Coalition? I know we were talking about that before.
Yeah. So I think, you know, the city needs to look at itself as, you know, we're especially with its rules of having not just a closed primary, but a super closed primary, where if you're not D or R, you don't vote in the primary, which I don't like personally, but it is what it is. And the reason I don't like it is because I don't view that as constitutional. I think if your taxes fund elections as ours do, if it's a party caucus and convention, knock yourself out. But I think if you have a taxpayer funded election system, not every single person should have an opportunity to vote in those primaries, not cross over and screw with it, but, you know, one of the two options. But I digress. We have to build out a common sense driven civic alternative in this city. And I think it's imperative to do that, especially considering nationally, I think the rest of this century is very much going to be a Republican default party in the system century.
Nationally.
Nationally. Republicans are going to win nationally. So New York City needs to really ask itself on if you're not, you know, as long as you're not a true believer in Zohran communist, I think you're a gettable voter, or you should consider yourself a gettable voter, and vice versa. Because the civic alternative will have to include not just a lot of moderate Democrats and independents, but even say like a liberal like Bill Maher, who I know is not a New Yorker, but he says he's in the stadium somewhere. I 10 years ago, I definitely considered Bill Maher pretty liberal. And if Zohran and company and the DSA movement is making him deeply reconsider things, that's a gettable voter. And I think this is a city where you can build out this coalition, because we've seen it happen before. In the 1990s, Rudy Giuliani very much won, not just with Republicans and conservatives, but he won with Democrats in that coalition as well, and independents. And Michael Bloomberg, while kind of a Republican in name only, he brought out the business class. So I think a common sense coalition is 1/3 that Giuliani pro-public safety, quality of life coalition. I think it's 1/3 Bloomberg's business class that's like, what's this guy doing in real estate? Business activity and growth ain't going anywhere. This guy's going to squeeze out every productive part of the city. We've got to wake up and organize and go through one party. So you're going to get a lot of business class people. Let's say the Bloomberg coalition, that's another third. And then I think the final third is everything that's happened since, which is all the people that have come here since Bloomberg was mayor, which are basically your wave of transplants. And that's why you call me the transplant in chief. But I've been here 12 years. And so Zohran Mamdani won the 10 to 20 year transplant. I think that is a wake-up call. I think Republicans need to be looking at that and lead a common sense coalition and say, this person should be our voter. This is a voter we should win, because a 10 to 20 year transplant is someone who is a lot closer to a native New Yorker, in that you have been here a while, you've worked, you've probably had children here. You have a stake in the future of this city. And so that's a voter. That to me is the actual X factor swing voter for this future common sense coalition. And if it's a very ideological 10 to 20 year transplant that's like a full-on communist, by all means move on that door.
But most of them aren't.
I think most of them are not.
Most of them are,
And-
I would assume.
And I would imagine a good portion of them were
Yeah.
just doxxed by the mayor with his
Yes.
with
I
his
went-
French socialist tax.
Yeah, can you talk a little bit about that, because I'm not privy to it so
the
far.
mayor, and it's not, it's his tax, but he had to get the governor's permission to, he had to get Albany's permission to raise the tax, and Hochul did that. So because she's got a re-election and she's scared, and so scared of her left flank, didn't want a primary. So the pied à terre tax, French word, of course it is. It's basically a tax on $5 million homes, second homes though, of people. If it's a single family, multifamily home, or a condo co-op that's more than $1 million, which is a lot of them around this city. Yeah, that could be a studio in Manhattan. So the problem there, okay, that will literally, it's estimated that will lose revenue, by the way, and it's only about 13,000 people. But what he did is he had the Department of Finance release an incredibly overbroad list of tax class 1 and tax class 2, stating that you might be wait to receive a letter to be official, but he basically put 900,000 homeowners, which are 80% of the homeowners of the city, basically. He basically doxed, and the just for the audience, if you don't know what doxed is, the internet terminology of putting your private information online and in public. And I was one of the 900,000 doxed, and so I mean it was either incredibly stupid and incompetent or intentional. I think it was totally intentional.
Or both.
I think it was incredibly intentional. And I searched a lot of people I know that absolutely shouldn't be anywhere near this list, and we shouldn't be anywhere near this list. By the way, I mean, I kind of want to, now that I'm already doxxed, I kind of want to use this as evidence that, hey, our home's worth $1 million. It's not, but
Well, the thing is, people that own their homes, typically, maybe this is not the case in New York City.
That's what he really hates, the fact that we own our
that you
homes. That's what he
own
really
something, right? The socialists and the communists and the DSA, they
that's
don't
what
want
they
you
did.
to own anything.
Nope.
You will rent, or you will be with
You own nothing
NYCHA
and you'll
housing.
be happy.
Yeah, you will own nothing and you will be happy.
Which is why the globalists were always communists anyway, they just were rich
They were
communists.
communist and capitalist close.
And so is this guy. This guy's an aristocratic communist. He's a third world aristocrat communist.
And that's why I really believe, by the way, before we even continue, if you guys are watching right now, I want you to comment your thoughts about anything and everything we're doing. Give Tom a question, give me a question, give Troy a question. Last week, someone complimented my suit. Really appreciated that. You're the man. But I want to keep going. I want to cover the community-based issues, right? Tom, in your district, and we spent a lot of time out there. I live out there, so I definitely know some of the community issues. But talk to us a little more about some of the hyper-local issues that people face that maybe the average viewer would not be privy to if they're not from District 26.
Listen, right now we have a lot of problems. We got a few different things. We got a group of people that don't drive, and then we have a group of people that use public transportation. So people are really confused in different points because they didn't have both experiences.
Right.
And our streets, our roads, even our bike lanes, they're falling apart, even though they're building these and they're building them really fast. But I'm not thinking that they're planning everything out to be fair for everybody.
Yeah.
And also, I think that with safety on the subways, working with the
Absolutely.
homeless people in the neighborhoods, and just anyone to be a part of anything has to come together to help. One of these people that I just saw a news video on was a person that got the letter to be doxxed. 35 years teacher.
Mm.
He's a grandfather, and they want to make his tax. He lives in his house.
Yeah.
But they want him to prove it.
The amount of stress they're putting people through, like
that brownstone.
yeah,
They want to tax him $45,000 for it because it's worth $5 million. He's struggling to make sure his two grandchildren are going to go to college and have affordable rent, and that this is not fair.
all the mayor has done is put a ton of people through a bunch of stress that aren't even subject to the legalities of it.
Do we have the time now to prove where we live? Look at our taxes. Look where we file our taxes. Very simple. Not make us to have a letter or fill out something, a document. It could take 3 or 4. Oh yeah, it's only a 45-minute document. In many different
and I heard
situations.
I heard
not just this.
I heard the Department of Finance argued with him on this too and begged him not to do this.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm seeing the same thing happen locally that happened in the early Trump years, which is the permanent civil service of the city is finding their ways to push back against this mayor. Just like, and I know from our standpoint, we can't stand when permanent Washington bureaucrats, the deep state, if you will, push, thwart Trump's agenda. We hated that. But flip that around locally, the civil service is another portion, I think, of the common sense coalition that we have to build, the civic alternative common sense coalition, because I'm sorry, but if you're an NYPD, FDNY, sanitation, corrections, you're our voter. Every one of them. You're our voter. And there's a lot. The city retirees, the city's been throwing under the bus. There's a lot throughout the civil service that are just getting thrown under the bus. And now you have people in agencies like Department of Finance being like, I don't think we should be doing this. I don't think we should be publishing basically every property owner in the city. This only applies to 15,000 people at best.
People worried about handing down their house to their grandchildren.
Yeah.
Or a child.
Yep. It's crazy.
People tell me that they want to move out because they're worried about all this happening with them, trying to add more taxes and everything. They're like, maybe I should take our money elsewhere, take our $5 million and go somewhere else.
I like that you mentioned the infrastructure problem because, I mean, listen, the R train's never on time for May.
Yeah.
And it's true. And then, we take a look at the buses. I don't take the buses regularly, but from what I hear, they're not that great.
Struggle. The R train several times over the weekend, even if we had events in our neighborhood.
Yeah.
The R train was shut down. How is people
from
the other boroughs supposed to come?
Yeah, I was there, and it was.
And today myself, I was trying to figure out how I could get here. So I look at my my Google Maps, and I see that it's a struggle to get through the Hugh Carey Tunnel, go through the Brooklyn Bridge. So I said, okay, I'm gonna drive my car to Sunset Park and park. And I said, why I'm going to do that. And hopefully I'm going to catch the express train and get here in a half hour. And then I walk over to the train station, and there's tons and tons of garbage all over around the train, paper bags rolling down the stairs. It was disgusting. And then small businesses get fines at 6 o'clock in the morning to get garbage, but they don't bother to come around and clean the area next to the train so people don't trip. Elderly people, disabled people, this is ridiculous. So then I get on the train thinking I got a home run here. I got the N train, no just R train on the weekend. And here we go. I'm like, okay, I got 60th Street. I got 36th Street. I'm at Atlantic Avenue Station. All of a sudden, I'm going to Court Street. I'm going to all the local stops.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Going through City Hall. and everything. And I get to Canal Street and I get to 14th Street. Luckily, there was a Q train on the other, right on the other side. I ran into that so I could go one more stop to here. But how ridiculous it is. That Q train definitely went over the Manhattan Bridge. Why couldn't the N train do it? And by the corner of my eye, I saw the times of the next trains that were coming behind me was another N train, was a 11-minute wait, and the R train was a 17-minute wait.
Yeah.
This is unplanned. People don't know. They don't know that the train stops. I've had to pick up my daughter at 10 o'clock at night because they stopped running the R train into Bay Ridge at a certain time, and I would have to drive sometimes to 36th Street to Pacific or Atlantic. Unbelievable stuff, and it's not fair.
It's not fair at all. And then when you kind of bring that into the affordability factor, right? What are we really paying for? What? No, and that's not. It's a serious question. What are we paying for? And we're giving taxes to the city, and how are they reinvesting it? There's just garbage everywhere.
So
right, and the businesses are getting
probably. This would have cost me, if I took my car in here, almost $50.
Right.
And that's not even counting if I had to go in a parking garage.
Yeah.
And the trip would have been 2.5 hours to 3 hours to come back and forth.
Yeah.
You know, and this is unacceptable.
Yeah.
You know?
Especially when the quality of life and like we said before, the taxes and getting literally doxxed is on the menu. I think it's ridiculous. And that kind of loops back around to, there is a rising shift, not only in the Republican Party, but in Troy, you can definitely speak to this, in the American electorate in general, amongst blue collar, working class people, the everyman, right? Or the everywoman. It doesn't matter, where you're from, doesn't matter what your religion is. Typically, we've seen a shift, very strong shift to the right in those people prior to, I'll say, 2012, when we had Romney Obama, right?
Yeah.
The Republican Party was considered kind of like the business class, the bougie kind of like, I think business class is the best way to say it. And then ever since we saw the golden elevator in 2015, Donald Trump saying, we're going to build a wall, and we're going to, with all these massive, big ideas that will help the blue collar working class people. We've kind of had a bit of a party swap in a way, where now the Democrats are the party of the elite and the Republicans are the party of the people, of the community. I see a lot of that same energy in you, because you are a blue collar guy.
I've been stereotyped a lot my whole life, or not my whole life or whatever.
Yeah.
But on the left, you can't understand arts because you're not one of us.
Right.
And I grew up in the arts. I grew up in the entertainment business. And I, at one time, and it really hurt me, that one of my father's fans, my dad was a comic book artist, and he said to me, "You're totally going against your father. Your father would turn in a grave." My father was a conservative. He didn't believe in socialism. He grew up in a Russian Italian family, and we had the struggles, and he went through the Depression.
Yeah.
And I'm just here because I want to be a part of helping everybody, and it doesn't make a difference who you are.
Especially those communities, though, and because that's our district, right? Bay Ridge, Sunset Park, Dyker Heights, maybe bits and pieces of Dumbo are more white collar, but the majority of it is blue collar, working class, everyday people. And the whole point of why I brought that up is that you yourself own a motorcycle shop. You yourself, Navy veteran. How long were you in the NYPD for?
I was in there for 9 years.
For 9 years, NYPD detective, canine handler.
I was very fortunate that, because I think of the mix of me growing up in the city and the suburb, I was able to understand many lifestyles and be able to help people.
That's very fair. That's very fair. And I feel like a lot of this is coming from a tension in the American people, especially in New York City. And Troy, I want you to speak to this, but what can we do, right? Not only what can Tom Stanton do, but what can the Republican Party do? What can New York State do? What can the city do to restore the middle class? That's where that anger and where that resentment is coming from.
Just to be honest.
Yeah, I think we'll say the middle and working classes of this country I think they've been up for grabs for a long time. Yeah, under the Trump era, Republicans have seized the advantage. But I don't think just prior to that, the Democrats had the advantage. I think the Democrats have been losing working class voters for decades. And they got to a point where they stopped even caring that they're losing working class voters. And it went from like shrugging shoulders to eventually mockery and snide comments like, well, you don't understand the arts. Like, well, you don't know, like that, like kind of this bougie, like smug liberalism would rise up from the coast, which is why Trump's coastal elites argument works so well. But at least as like somebody who grew up in middle America, our view of the large cities on the coast, and on one hand, we're fine being ignored by the media, but we also understood intuitively that we were disrespected. And that we were able to shrug our shoulders for a long time with that. But after Trump won, the utter rage against middle America from the elite media markets came out completely. And I'm, of course, a New Yorker by that time. So I'm hearing like people disrespecting all the people I grew up with within an earshot every day for those 4 years. And it was so insulting to hear. And it was just so remarkable how out of touch they were. So this is why I always go back to 2/3 of this realignment has been what the Democrats have done and haven't done. And then only the last third is what Republicans have done. So maybe that's the answer, is Republicans can start promoting and I think that under Trump we've already had a really, really good start of promoting policies that are explicitly pro working and middle class while also being pro freedom, pro free enterprise and all of that, and not having like some sort of managed economy, because we're not commies here. But that's like the national, the reindustrialization agenda, tariffs rather than free trade. All of that stuff is like nationally focused. So I think the next chapter of it is, how do we take that at the city and state level? And I think here's how we do it. They say you're for affordability. They're for affordability over there. No, they're not. This is the most, they've been governing this place for years, and this is incredibly expensive. They're the cause of these problems. We're not, you can say, you can yell one thing at us. We haven't shown up enough, and we're working on that. And we're working on showing up. We're working on party building and organizing and scaling up. But you can't say that our policies have led to these problems, because the Democrats have been governing this city and state for decades now. And it's the most expensive place in America with high taxes. And they used to say, you get really great services out of this. But I think more and more, we've been paying more and more and receiving less and less.
Well, the
You
utility
said be honest. The utility, yeah. No,
the utility costs are ridiculous out here.
it's ridiculous.
And we are getting our electricity from Pennsylvania and Ohio.
Mhm.
And Erie County, we could frack and bring down our natural gas costs. We could bring back nuclear power, and then preserving nature. I couldn't believe it to hear that Democrats voted to put solar panels inside of lakes because they're clear, upstate New York. Isn't that ruining the water system?
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't know what that does to it.
Yeah. You're gonna put some metal pipes or plastic pipes.
Also, I'm a little tired of being lectured on the environment by people when I walk around their neighborhoods, they throw trash on the street.
Yeah.
Like, new rule. If your streets are full of trash, you don't get to lecture me on environmental policy. My hometown can lecture me on environmental policy because our streets are spotless, but not the coastal dweller in the large city where streets are full, and not some streets are really, really clean in the city. It depends neighborhood to neighborhood, but there's definitely a lot of blue. There's definitely
all the trash cans out of them.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And
That's right.
I've seen that plenty of times.
That's
At
right.
least put one in a corner.
I want to wrap around what you said before, though. I said, how can we restore the middle class, bring it back? You said, be honest. What did you mean by that?
Not that anybody's not honest.
Right.
I'm going up there to lobby for people.
Mhm.
That's when I become senator
For the people of your district.
for my district and for anyone in the state. I will support anyone else, no matter. And I want to work with parties and on both sides and make sensible and common sense decisions.
Mhm.
I guess you would call that common sense.
Common sense. I like it.
You know,
Let's go.
and I want to be up there to lobby for the community and what is fair, and not lecture people from the top and bring it to us and stuff our mouths out with whatever, or stuff our lifestyles and with inconveniences. You know, I went down to downtown Brooklyn on Court Street, and they changed the road over there a little bit, and
To a truck lane, right?
they're not calling that a truck lane.
Okay.
I haven't really looked too much into what they're calling it, but they basically made it one lane, and if something happens on that street, emergency vehicles can't get down. DOT says they could put the fire trucks or ambulances down the bike lane. They're not going to do that. Their union's not going to let that happen because people could get ran over, and it's unsafe. And they put a lot of blockades there, and also a lot of the small businesses over there are not able to run. They're going out of business. I went to a funeral on Court Street recently, and I got my daughter and I a cup of coffee each and 2 banana breads, and it came out to $37 with tip.
It's ridiculous.
You know, this is not what we need in today's world.
Yeah, especially when we're blocking off ambulance routes. I mean, I remember you and I were actually with Chairman McCabe and a couple other elected officials, people running for office, and we stopped by a firehouse somewhere in that area. I believe it was in Red Hook.
Yes.
And
no, it was in Carroll Gardens.
Carroll Gardens. And then right next to the firehouse are these like massive droves of bikes. And I'm like, how are we supposed to pull
I'm not against bike lanes. I'm not against this city bike system.
But the infrastructure
it's
itself.
the infrastructure and planning on where to put these things. The ambulance station house over there wasn't notified this was happening. They didn't get any input out of it. They put about 40 city bikes in right next to the ambulance, and that's a staging area for one of their bigger ambulances.
Right.
Now they can't stage there.
Right.
And this is serious stuff when it comes down to saving someone. Having the ambulance parked in a proper spot, having room. And yes, we could put them on the sidewalk, but everything has to be worked out and planned out fairly. DOT should be working with people are not just one-sided, you know, and in this situation. Like when I go down on a community board, I feel like I don't get a say there.
Yeah.
Because I've applied to be in there and help the community, but they don't give a chance. It's all seemingly to the left.
Yeah.
It's also all centralized planning.
Yes.
Right. This is straight from the manifesto, straight from the
And
content.
it's not to say that, this person's driving. I bike, you know,
Sure.
and I ride a motorcycle, and I think having scooters and bicycle lanes is dangerous. I think the way that they're setting up some of these places, they got some bad potholes, and it's dangerous for the bicycles.
Yeah.
The city bikes, you can put them on the sidewalk, but some sidewalks can't have them because then you don't have room for the pedestrian to walk.
Exactly.
And when I also down at the end of Atlantic Avenue, it's such a mess down there that cars could hit the bicycle rider.
Yeah.
The pedestrian can't walk on a sidewalk because they set up the city bikes a certain way. And this also happened in downtown Manhattan the other day, the way they set up the bike lanes. How many times you got to be very careful. You make a right turn to go down the street, and the big bike lane is there. And all of a sudden, a bike comes flying by, or a scooter, and You almost hit.
I want to read a comment here. I'm reading one from. I'm sorry if I'm butchering your name. I'm reading it from Milvien Victor. Sorry if I'm not saying your name right. Victor says, "Looking good, guys. How do we stop Mamdani from going to the 9/11 memorial?" Guys, your thoughts?
Oh, I've signed that petition. So if you haven't, please sign that petition that's been going around. I think it's up to 65,000. So let's get that up to 100,000. If you haven't signed the petition, look online. I think I shared it on my X. You can follow me at Troy M. Olson. I'll share it again later tonight. And maybe the club could share it, but sign that petition, get that up to 100,000. And I think by September 11th, we can get it. Let's go for 500,000, maybe 1 million.
Sounds good.
But now that's just one way. That's a petition but that's public pressure. And that's what I would say. Consistent public pressure. Okay. So I'll actually do an analogy that just happened. Tragically, we lost a staff sergeant, a soldier in the Iran war. And the mayor did go to her funeral, but was shut out from being able to speak. And apparently he was all butthurt about that. But the way I see it, the thing that I think for certain can do is shut him from having any speaking / ceremonial role.
It's
maybe he's standing there. Maybe he's at 9/11. Maybe he ends up going there. Although I would like to not even see that. But I'm positive that because it's similar and analogous to a funeral, the families and their wishes are what matter most of all. I don't care if you're the mayor. I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're the president of the United States. If it's my family member, the family runs the funeral and they decide who's going to speak and remember this person and their sacrifice. So, and their service and their life. So that is, I think, the guaranteed way it could play out. And then let's try to not have them come at all, because I have no doubt that there was not an ounce of sympathy expressed in that household 25 years ago. I have no doubt of that. So I don't want him there. And I hope he doesn't show up. It would be in his political benefit to not show up.
I think that's fair. And before we go to you, Tom, I definitely want to get your thoughts on this. Guys, I know you're looking at me. I know you're listening to me. And I want to hear from you. What do you guys think about Mamdani coming to the 9/11 memorial ceremony? What do you guys think about anything else? What do you guys think about Tom and Sense? Good slogan, bad slogan? I don't know. I like it. Please keep commenting. Tom, your thoughts?
I lost a lot of people who died 9/11.
Mm-hmm.
People that on the job, right next to my locker, friends, partners in the police department, guy that drove next to me every day. When I could understand, we don't need negativity, and I understand what we need for the people for 9/11. I understand we have a right to speak. He should make his conscious decision on himself what he wants to do. If he wants to, and he wants to push a subject and hurt people's feelings, that's his own decision. It's all up to him.
Right. That's very fair. I want to cover a couple of issues covering the districts as it pertains to the 26th. And then the more we get comments, we'll roll back around to you guys. Public safety is a really big problem right now. Mm-hmm. It's in the subways, it's in the streets, whether it's 2 p.m. or 2 a.m. It's pretty much a cancer running throughout this entire city of just no matter where you are, what time it is, who you're with, you're susceptible to attack. And I know that, living in Bay Ridge, we're a little more privileged than, areas like East New York or Dumbo or parts of even Uptown, but or the Bronx for that matter. But, and I want to get your perspective too, Troy. How can we fight crime from the state Senate? What's going to be the playbook in order to help Mayor Mamdani in, hiring more police officers, how can we help the city through the state level?
I'll take it. There's a couple of laws that were passed at the state level that should just be flat out repealed. That would help. Bail reform should be scaled back, rolled back, or just, even if it's a middle ground. The diaphragm law, like there's a couple of things that were done, especially after 2018, that Cuomo signed into law after after we lost the state Senate, that were passed and you're seeing, you didn't really see enough of it when they were passed, but then you had COVID the next year. And I think those two things work together and have just spiraled. So I think walking those actions back from the 2019-20 session would be a start. And then, definitely you could always hire more officers. I think one of the critical things that's happened, though, the last, ever since 2020 is a tremendous lack of respect that progressive Democrats have for law enforcement. And it really, I think the way that they have rhetorically behaved, and they've walked it back a little bit since, but I think anyone who has some common sense or Tommen sense knows their real feelings.
I love Tom and Seth so much. I got to be honest.
And I think it's like, I think that you do, as any political leader, if you lose the trust of a key part of any part of the civil service, good luck getting anything done in an efficient and successful manner.
Yeah,
Once
it's not
you
even
lose
that, but you're
trust.
losing public
Losing the
trust.
public
Exactly.
trust,
Yeah,
yeah.
we're on the same page.
Yeah.
It's almost like if we let criminals out the following day of them committing a murder or robbing somebody, that they might do it again.
Yeah, I
You
mean,
know?
I mean, let's just forget about all the nerd policies and I just went into. We could actually solve all this very simply.
But-
Almost all of the crime is committed by a very small amount of people. We should arrest them and lock them up.
That'd be ideal.
that-
Tom, you
that
would say
would be
something?
Well, first of all, most important, fund the police, but fund all the agencies that are involved, boots on the ground on the street. All the way from our education, all right? They're teaching our children, all right? Also, our fire department, our sanitation workers, everyone should be funded properly and be out there and be vigilant and show that you're there. And when I was started off as a rookie in East New York, Mayor Bloomberg flooded the area, and God bless, because I love East New York. My father grew up there. My dad went to Franklin Clay Lane. He left for the Navy over there.
Yeah.
And I have a lot of love for that neighborhood. But what we did was we got onto I got the idea of it, and so did many other police officers. Vigilance. Stand on every corner at that time. That's what we needed to do. But what got me to become a detective pretty quickly was between my police, from my military and my experience living in both suburban and city life. My sergeant, who is a fantastic sergeant, a Muslim from Afghanistan, he believed in me. And anytime there was a shooting, he put me on that corner where that shooting was. I made sure it was clear, but I got it. I friended everyone on that corner. I talked to everyone, and you got to be the social worker as well as the protector and the educator, the mentor. And that's what we got to work on when it comes to law enforcement, our first responders, our essential workers, that everyone needs training how to interact with people. And we will improve on the safety of our community.
It sounds like we need more Tom Stantons in the NYPD. I really like that.
Well, I think it's quite interesting that I got in trouble before I got on a job. I was a kid. I made my mistakes, but I also served. I served our country in the Navy, and I also served our community from the community. Even off duty, I was helping our community. But what I found interesting, and also I have heroin addicts in my family. I have alcoholics in my family. I have people that been to jail, and I had a really good understanding of when people need help.
Right.
And what I found was sometimes you get somebody coming into law enforcement that might be a chip on their shoulders. They're going to change everything. And you're seeing a lot of left coming into the police department thinking they're going to change it, and almost into some type of communist regime. And it's sad. But when they are rocking and rolling and they start really getting into the job and they're seeing what they're facing, then they start realizing it. How many of my friends I've worked with, finally, it took them a while to get it. They might have had a chip on their shoulder when they're walking through, but by the time they come out, they know that they're serving our country and our community.
Absolutely.
I think when I saw this in the military, people will come in left leaning, and they'll leave at least moderate or more conservative than when they entered. I was certainly like that. I don't think I've ever really been left leaning, but I left the military. Those experiences plus my small town upbringing is why I'm a conservative, populist hybrid. Because I think there's just something about uniformed services that is culturally coded as conservative. Because to serve effectively in uniformed services, you have to have a respect for hierarchy and chain of command and showing up on time and rigid, clear, rules and procedures. And these are all things that liberals and leftists are not comfortable with and don't have respect for. So you might come in and think, I'm going to reform this thing. It's unjust. And what happens is that changes them. Actually, they won't be changing it. That profession they're going into, that they aren't looking at.
Some people don't change, and the ones that don't change, it seems like they get in trouble. On the job eventually. And I've seen it that it's as simple as taking a $20 bill.
Right.
Or they just have this chip on their shoulder and they ended up sitting in the back of the precinct, never doing anything.
You get mugged by reality. Hopefully they're not that brave, but that's the other.
And it's just that we got to bring the pride of the community back and everybody working together and understanding each other.
Yeah. We got to bring back that beating heart of the community, the way it was, And, we have a lot of media primed and prepped to show to you guys. We have the reality check. We have a special address from our president. We have a lot coming up. I just want to get, where we can find you too. And then one last message from Tom. Troy, where can we find you?
I said it earlier. You can find me on Insta and X and Substack at Troy M. Olson. That's TroyMolson. Yeah.
I always mess up his last name. Tom, where can we find you?
Really easy. Go online, and all you have to do is type in my name. And my name is real. It's Tom, Tom. Very simple. Comes from Norwegian background. Stanten. All right. And my Stanten is different than the usual Stanten. It's Stanten. There is no O-N in there. So just remember that. And you're going to find me. And you're going to find my phone number. You could call me up. I don't care. Because I love people and I love talking to people and working things out.
Beautiful final words from future Senator Tom Stanten. Coming straight to you is a presidential address from our club president, Stefano L. Forte.
Mamdani should be nowhere near the 9/11 Remembrance Ceremony. My name is Stefano Forte, president of the New York Young Republican Club. 9/11 families have demanded Mayor Mamdani be banned from this year's memorial. A petition that has garnered 41,000 signatures is calling on the mayor to not attend this year's remembrance. 9/11 is a solemn day for our nation, but especially for this city. Mamdani's presence at this memorial is not only distasteful, but a reminder that many have forgotten the violence that Islamic terrorism brought on this city. Zohran has consistently surrounded himself with those that seek to downplay the devastation and horror that occurred on 9/11. He's gone so far as to campaign with Hassan Piker, who claimed our country had it coming. He has endorsed, appointed, and fostered a movement that would like us to forget. Let this be a message to Zohran Mamdani. We don't need your smug face on our screens. Give real New Yorkers just one day to look back on the horrors of 9/11 without you using it as a means to shove your politics down our throats. Read the room, Mr. Mayor, and see yourself out.
Very important message from our club president, Stefano L. Forte. You know what else is very important? Crime in the city. As we were just talking about it before, our city and our country is scary right now. And with that note, I want to bring to you the Sunday Scaries with James. Really appreciate you guys tuning in. Coming to you right now.
Mayor Zohran Mamdani announced this week that he intends to stand alongside fellow victims of the September 11th terrorist attacks. Despite a petition urging him not to attend the ceremony, Mamdani insisted he has every right to identify as one of the attack's victims.
Growing up in the shadow of 9/11, I have known what it means to live with an undercurrent of suspicion in this city. I will always remember the disdain that I faced.
He added that the prejudice he experienced as a Muslim New Yorker uniquely qualifies him to stand with the families of those who lost loved ones on September 11th. Mamdani also considered bringing Imam Siraj Wahhaj, whom he publicly described as one of the nation's foremost Muslim victims, but he decided that would ultimately distract from the event.
We always love the Sunday Scaries, folks. They're some of the best, as a good man often says. Coming to you right now is a reality check with the lovely Yulia.
Let me tell you guys something about Dr. Anthony Fauci, because you got to give it to him. This man has been at it for what, 50 years? He survived the AIDS crisis. He survived being burned in effigy by ACT UP activists in the late 80s. He survived 7 presidents, COVID, and he got a presidential pardon. And then this week, pardon my language, this cockroach with a medical degree and a security detail sat before Congress under subpoena and took the fifth over 100 times. I mean, he could have come out and debated his decisions, but no. Instead, here's a bit of a sneak peek of how the hearing actually went. Check this out.
What day of the week is it today? On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
What color tie are you wearing?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
What color is the carpet in front of you?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
How anyone can watch that and think Fauci did nothing wrong or has nothing to hide is beyond me. Now look, you've got people over on the left saying the whole point of this hearing was to bait him into perjuring himself. But here's my problem with that. What this man didn't affect just one person or even a small community. It affected millions, if not billions of people. People all over the world who took an experimental vaccine that nobody can tell you the long-term effects of. And the fact that normies still believe Fauci was some kind of hero shows just how deep the mass psychosis around COVID really was. He destroyed millions of lives with no real scientific backing. And if you genuinely believe in science and they screamed at us to follow the science, remember for what, 2 straight years? Then at the very least, if you have nothing to hide, if your policies were correct, if the decisions you made were the right ones, debate it. Come out and defend your work. So why, with all of this hanging over you, with a full presidential pardon protecting you from prosecution, is the best you can do 121 times of, on the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline? Either you did something wrong or you're a coward. And at this point, I'm not really sure which one's worse. Anthony Fauci has a full presidential pardon from Joe Biden signed on January 19th, 2025. And it covers everything from January 1st, 2014, through the date of the pardon. So his role at NIAID on the COVID task force and as chief medical advisor. Theoretically, he should be able to walk into that hearing room and answer every single question freely because the pardon is supposed to remove the risk of federal prosecution for all of it. And he still took the 5th. But the problem with that is there is a Supreme Court precedent, Brown v. Walker, 1896, that has been on the books for over a century. And it says that once you have been pardoned, you may not stand upon your privilege. You lose the 5th Amendment protection for the things the pardon covers. Because the whole point of the 5th Amendment is to protect you from self-incrimination. And if you're already protected from prosecution, there's nothing left to incriminate yourself with. Which means every single time he said, on the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline, he wasn't invoking a constitutional right. He was just refusing to answer. And that is called contempt, my friends. So the question that everybody is now asking and nobody has a clean answer to is why? If you're protected, why are you silent? Let's stop pretending this is complicated. Either the man has something to hide that the pardon doesn't fully protect, or the pardon itself is weaker than they want us to believe. Because here's what former Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard released on her final day in office. Documents showing Fauci funded dangerous gain-of-function research on bat coronaviruses at the Wuhan Institute of Virology, using our taxpayer dollars, of course. Documents showing he worked with politicized elements of the intelligence community to suppress the lab leak origin, and documents showing he lied to Congress under oath in 2024, specifically denying that he ever spoke to any intelligence officials about viral research. The correspondence released directly contradicts that sworn testimony, because here's what we know now. In late January and early February of 2020, right at the beginning, Fauci was on private calls with top scientists. And on those calls, several of them told him the virus looked like it could have been manipulated in a lab. They used the phrase deliberate insertion. They also said the Wuhan market looked more like a place the virus spread from, not where it started. Fauci wrote those concerns down in his own notes. Then, for the next 2 years, the public story was completely different. We were told over and over that it almost certainly came from animals at the market. Anyone who talked about a lab was treated like a conspiracy theorist. Social media censored it, Biden officials dismissed it, and Fauci was the face of that official story. So this isn't complicated. Privately, the possibility of a lab origin was on the table right from the start, and he knew it. Publicly, however, that possibility was shut down. And that's why people are angry, as they should be. And that's why sitting under subpoena with a presidential pardon and still refusing to answer questions looks exactly like what it is. Now, Senator Rand Paul announced there will be a contempt vote next week. If that goes through, we're in Bannon and Navarro territory. Will the same thing happen to the untouchable Dr. Fauci? I wouldn't hold my breath. When it was Navarro and Bannon, Democrats couldn't move fast enough to put them in handcuffs. But when it's one of their own, a man whose decisions and policies got people killed, yes, killed, from the AIDS years straight through COVID, suddenly everyone gets real quiet. If Republicans don't force real accountability here, then this was never about justice. It was just another performance. And here's the part that should make your blood boil. Not only did this man lie to you, suppress the people who told the truth, and rewrite the rules of how you were allowed to live, he got rich doing it. Spectacularly, obscenely rich.
And what were these individuals doing in the depth of the pandemic in November of 2020, when millions of Americans were suffering from COVID? What were they doing? I tell you what they're doing. Folkers was on your behalf soliciting and gathering information for a cash award. Let's look at it. We've got his email right here, right over my shoulder. Volker says, I'm working on this nomination for the Dan David Award for Fauci. We need to beef up the COVID part. Do you have language in the can that you could share that delineates how we responded in new ways to COVID? He sends this to multiple federal employees. What was the Dan David Award? Do you remember, Doc?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
It was a $900,000 cash award. $900,000 cash award. And he got it because he used federal employees to get it. And this wasn't the only award, was it, Dr. Fauci? In fact, you applied for and received at least 8 other federal cash prizes on federal time using federal employees and federal resources. Here.
Millions dead, and he was running a personal enrichment operation out of the people's government. $900,000 from the Dan David Award alone. 8 separate cash prizes. Over $1 million in personal cash during the pandemic. Net worth, now north of $12 million. First year pension, over $400,000 a year. Not to mention an entire generation of children whose education was stolen from under them. So let me ask you guys something. No, let me ask our friends over on the left something. Does this look like a public servant to you? Because from where I'm sitting, this is a self-serving parasite in a lab coat. And he's been that for a very, very long time, way before COVID. Do our friends over on the left even know that Anthony Fauci was the face of the federal response during the AIDS epidemic? Because what he did then was push AZT, a drug that got rushed out at doses so toxic it was destroying people's bone marrow and wrecking what was left of their bodies. And maybe our friends over on the left don't remember ACT UP, the left-wing AIDS activist group that became famous for confrontational protests calling Fauci a murderer in public. But you gotta give it to him, a true magician, because he adjusted just enough, took the credit when better drugs eventually showed up, and kept climbing. And poof, the people who called him a killer moved on. But he stayed. And the next time a virus hit, they put the same man back on television and told everyone to trust him. That is the thing about this particular type of person, the soulless technocrat who weasels his way into a position of institutional power and then becomes untouchable. Not because he's right or effective, it's because he understands how to protect himself within the system better than anyone around him. Because that's the other thing. His diary is now public. And what he wrote privately and what he told the American people were not the same story. Millions of people were forced to take an experimental vaccine that even some of the people who helped create the technology later said they wouldn't trust. And all of this happened in 2020, during a presidential election. So you had mass hysteria, lockdowns, and suddenly, mail-in ballots everywhere. Now, I'm not saying I can prove he sat in a room and said, let's use this to take out Trump, but the effect was the same, no? The country was put under a medical emergency that rewrote how we voted, how we lived, and how we were allowed to speak. Senator Moreno said it best.
It was about 6 years ago today that I decided I'm going to give up my businesses, sell them all, run for office, run for the United States Senate. Here I am sitting in front of you 6 years later saying, who the fuck do you think you were for doing that? It is a total disgrace what you did to this country. And if my Democrat colleagues are standing there defending you, I hope the voters of the United States of America watch the clips of every one of you doting on a guy who was more interested in being a celebrity than saving American people.
I'll tell you who he thinks he is. He thinks he's untouchable, and for 50 years, he's been right. And we all lived through this I lived through this. I'm basically a refugee in Florida, mainly because of what happened during COVID in New York City. I watched half the country and then my city lose its goddamn mind. People turning on each other, calling each other murderers for taking a walk in the park, Soviet-style checkpoints outside of restaurants. And it started somewhat gradually. I mean, first it was just wear a mask to walk in. Then you can take it off at the dinner table, make it make sense. But fine, okay. Then you need to show your vaccine card to eat said dinner. And I remember thinking, do you understand what that looks like? You're asking people to show proof of a medical procedure just to have access to public life? You know what else that looked like in history? You know, I was working at Fox News at the time, and even at the network that had people like Tucker at that point on television every night questioning all of it, they sent everyone home for 2 years, and when they wanted to bring people back, they started offering money to get vaccinated. First a little, then a little bit more. Then, if you said no, you might have fought for a religious exemption, and then they fought back against that. Then, when you finally got it, well, get to the office early, girl. You've got to test every single morning, even though I never had COVID that I know of. And don't forget to walk around in that stupid little diaper, even though you tested negative in the morning. And don't think for a second that that doesn't put a target on your back, because Fauci was that good at creating a mass psychosis. What Fauci oversaw was not just bad medicine, bad science. It was a test of how far institutional power could push before people pushed back. And the answer is, as it turns out, pretty far. They shut down businesses. They closed schools for years. They rewrote how we voted. Mass mail-in ballots, ballot drop boxes, extended counting windows, all justified by a public health emergency that he was the face of. They censored doctors who disagreed. They banned words. They silenced scientists who asked the wrong questions. And all of it happened under the umbrella of follow the science. The left othered you using Anthony Fauci's help. If you didn't take the vaccine, you were the enemy. You were dangerous. You were killing people. That's not science. That's a purity test. And the man who gave them the justification for it, well, he walked away powerful, rich, and famous. Now, there were other doctors once, in another time, who also called what they were doing science, who also used the machinery of the state to conduct experiments on human beings without their consent and justified it with credentials and authority. The Nuremberg Code was written specifically in response to what those doctors did so that the mechanism could never be repeated again. The idea that doctors with government backing can decide what happens to your body and destroy anyone who disagrees. But what I think makes Dr. Anthony Fauci, what he did in some ways, even more disturbing is that the people those doctors experimented on had no choice. Fauci somehow made his subjects walk in willingly. They were socially engineered into consent. That is the more advanced version of the same evil. The kind the left cheered for, gave awards to, and put on the cover of InStyle magazine. And that's the reality check with Yulia.
The thing about Yulia is she's one of the hardest workers on this crew, on this cast. She is truly amazing, an expert in her field. We love Yulia, folks. One of the best. We have one more program for you. But before we go to that program, I need you to do something for me. I need you to go to NYYRC.com/join. That's NYYRC.com/join. I want you to become a member of the oldest, largest, and most active Republican club in the country. And on a separate note, and then we're going to get to the Frank Forum, we have a plethora of elections coming up. We have elections for state senate. We had Tom Stanten here, and we want to thank Tom Stanten with his Tom and Sense. We want to thank him for coming on and giving us some words of wisdom about his upbringing, his plans for the district. And we really do believe that Tom is the right man for the job, we're happy to endorse him. But we have plenty of races this year throughout Brooklyn, throughout Queens, throughout really the entire city. We need you to join us. We need you to join the NYYRC Campaigns Committee, and you'd be talking to big guy right here. Me and my good friend Troy Olson would be facilitating those operations. So if you are interested in politics, if you want to get more involved in politics, join the NYYRC at nyyRC.com/join and join my committee, the Campaigns Committee. Coming to you now is going to be the Frank Forum, an episode that Troy, unfortunately, could not make it to, but it's going to be a fun time. You're going to love it. This is the Frank Forum.
Hello and welcome to the Frank Forum podcast. My name is Frank Filicomo, and I'm so excited today to be joined by my good friend, Catherine Jean Lopez. Catherine is the religion editor at National Review and a fellow at National Review Institute. Catherine, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks, Frank.
Pretty crazy stuff going on in the news. It seems like just about every day we hear about another act of anti-Semitic violence. You are obviously a devout Catholic, but you've written quite a lot about anti-Semitism. Why do you feel that it's important that Catholics or Christians writ large kind of tackle this issue?
Well, first of all, unfortunately, every time I write something about anti-Semitism, it winds up being timely, which is just infuriating, but predictable, unfortunately. Among other things, the Catholic Church during the Second Vatican Council made clear that it's non-negotiable for Catholics to speak out against anti-Semitism.
Right.
Anti-Semitism is a sin, it's evil. The Catholic Church has been very clear on that. And I'm myself, like you, native New Yorker.
Yeah.
Growing up, it never even dawned on me that that I wasn't supposed to like Jews, or that there was even, I mean, I knew there was some basic differences,
Right.
You got one book over there, I got two books, but I mean, frankly, especially in the New York of today, I have more in common with most, certainly Orthodox Jews, conservative Jews, than many other people in New York. It's never even dawned on me to be anti-Semitic. Thanks be to God. But when I hear stories about, I have Hasidic friends, women who have been shoved on the street when they're walking their kids in
just
Brooklyn,
for being visibly
just
Jewish.
for being visibly Jewish,
Right.
I remember after the October 7th attacks feeling a little ridiculous every time I saw somebody who is obviously Jewish wearing a yarmulke or something. I just wanted to go over and say, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And I remember saying that to a number of Hasidic friends of mine, and they said, yeah, actually, that makes more of an impact than you realize. And I had friends telling me that at the grocery store or something, Christians were coming up to them and doing something like that. And they really appreciated it, because there is a sense, particularly if you live in a place like New York City, that it's not overly dramatic to say under siege, that Jews feel under siege. Especially, again, if Hasidics are particularly stand out, right?
Yes.
And I mean, I remember right after October 7th, friends of mine, women with kids, telling me that their husbands wanted them to get guns, and they agreed.
Yeah.
Living in New York or New Jersey, and that just shouldn't be. And,
Absolutely.
And unfortunately, we're at a point where, of course, the most timely thing is the mayor kind of fanning flames.
Yes.
Mayor of New York. But it's higher education. We saw that after the October 7th attacks. It's so much in culture. Just the other day, I mean, silly example in a sense, but You're too young to know Culture Club and Boy George, but you've learned.
True.
Boy George comes out, and I haven't heard, God bless him, his name in a while, but decades, I suppose. But you know, I 80s pop is my thing. You know, when I was growing up, and so I Karma Chameleon was one of the songs.
Oh, was that Boy George?
Yeah, just Boy.
I didn't know that.
I knew you knew who Boy George was.
Wow.
All right, yeah. So anyway, he produced the song with AI, which I don't really understand how that does.
Okay.
But anyway, in support of Israel. And he has a line in there. It's something like, I don't feel like I'm courageous. I just need to be a human being.
Yes.
Which it basically sums it up, because my buddy John Ondrasik, the lead singer of Five for Fighting.
Oh, okay.
He 100 Years is the song, you would know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. He's a big conservative.
That's a throwback.
Anyway, John was going off on social media as he should, saying that Boy George is courageous for doing this pro-Israel song, and he was doing it in response to the mayor of New York, which is insane that one has to do that. And yeah, no, but Boy George's reaction is the right one. This isn't courageous. This is just human.
That's right. It's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
I think, something that I enjoy so much about your writing is that I think we understand as conservatives the importance of context. And, anti-Semitism didn't just come out of the ether after October 7th. It's been around for as long as Jews have been around.
Yeah.
And you wrote, I think, a really, really good and instructive article, Anti-Semitism is Always Evil, for National Review. And you take things all the way back to the 2nd century. Tell us a little bit about the lessons that we could learn about anti-Semitism from the 2nd century. And who is this fella Marcion?
Yeah, so honestly, and I attribute it fully in the piece, my friend Mike Aquilina, who's a Catholic apologist, he's written at least 50 books, probably more, on biblical history and things like that. Anyway, Mike wrote a piece for a publication called Angelus out of Los Angeles on Marcion. And so Marcion was this thinker in the 2nd century who very wealthy, came from a lot of money. And he basically made the case, because remember context, so Christians are being fed to the lions in Rome, right? Christians and Jews aren't getting along, so Jews are a good scapegoat, aren't particularly popular. And Marcion's idea is, let's just write the Jews out of Christian history, just get rid of them. Some basic problems with that may be that Christ was a Jew, his mother was a Jew. I don't know.
And you'd have to jettison the entire Old Testament.
Correct. And
I'm no theologian, but that seems difficult to reconcile.
A wee bit. Yeah, right. The Psalms. I mean, so many things would not make any sense anymore, and you couldn't even call upon anymore. But also anybody who has just, you don't have to be a theologian, any sense of salvation history. The Old Testament and the New Testament, they go together. The New Testament makes sense. References in the New Testament wouldn't make any sense without the Old Testament. So it was clearly a hateful act, and an ignorant one too.
And how was he seen to other people?
So mercifully, the church fathers at the time. So we had Irenaeus, would probably be the most well-known, and others wanted to distance themselves from him. And actually, my understanding is that the church actually gave him money back. Like, we don't want your money.
No kidding.
Which, I mean, that's kind of unheard of, and pretty cool actually, because they knew this couldn't be.
Right.
And that was kind of a cool. I mean, that's something that I've learned in the last few months about Christian history, which I'm really excited. And one of the church fathers ran into him in the street, and he said, "Do you know who I am?" Right. And it was something like the spawn of Satan wasn't the phrase, but it was close. It was close to that.
I recognize you as the firstborn of Satan.
Firstborn of Satan. Yeah, that was pretty close to spawn.
Yeah.
Which of course, on social media these days, people say a lot worse, but
that's for sure.
That's pretty frank for the 2nd century Roman street, I think. But more importantly, when I wrote that column, I just thought it was an important thing that I didn't know. And so I was going to share it. And of course, I knew that it would wind up being timely. But then I was annoyed when it became timely, right. Unfortunately, once again. And even as we record this, there was an attack in New York City on a Jewish day camp.
Yes.
A man with a hammer.
Yep.
There was
in Queens.
There was an incident on the Upper
West Side
last week, and there are so many. There was. I can't keep track. In fact, I did an interview with Mike Aquilina for National Review, our little YouTube page. And I not little, thank you very much.
No,
our YouTube
burgeoning.
Page. And so, but I remember. So I Googled to see, okay, what's the latest anti-Semitic news?
Yeah.
I could not even get a handle. There was something in France, and there was something in Sweden, and there was something in Toronto, and and it may be a bomb that wasn't detonated outside a synagogue, or so it may be something that you didn't hear about.
Right.
But it's happening, and it's frequent, and and it's evil, and it's evil, and it's evil. And most striking, after Mamdani made that ridiculous speech about not being able to arrest Netanyahu, which he knew,
which for some reason is top priority for the
mayor of New York
City
as he's opening his grocery stores. And,
That's right.
He as he was doing that, you knew this was going to go nowhere good, and so it was, and it's maddening.
Well, let's talk a little bit about ideologically where anti-Semitism or Jew hatred, whatever you want to call it, ideologically where it stems from. I think that as conservatives, and I could just speak for myself here, for a long time, I've recognized it on the left, whether it be the Louis Farrakhan left or the Gaza solidarity encampments. But I think that, and Senator Ted Cruz and others have recognized this, there's a growing strain of it happening on the right. It used to be a strain that was kept at bay, when David Duke was running for office decades ago. Now it seems
and this is something that Bill Buckley used to work at National Review.
Yes.
Bill Buckley, the founder of National Review, spoke out against anti-Semitism.
Was it
famously.
In Search of Anti-Semitism, the book that he wrote? And so, whereas it used to be completely taboo just decades ago, my feeling is that it has sort of penetrated the mainstream, and that unfortunately the Overton window has expanded when it comes to anti-Semitism on the right. What do you make of this? What do you make of people like Tucker Carlson that seem to be going rampant on social media? His brother, if you could imagine this, Buckley Carlson, is even worse and talks about things like global Jewry and things like that. What do you make of this?
I remember when Tucker was a young reporter for the Weekly Standard. He wrote a great, I think it was a cover story on Down syndrome and how we're essentially trying to eradicate people with Down syndrome. Yeah, I don't know what's happened. I don't know if he himself is anti-Semitic, but I don't know what giving a platform to Nick Fuentes is, if not giving a platform to anti-Semitism.
Right.
Yeah. And then to have Heritage, where I interned as a college student, defend that move. It's just all so disturbing. But it gets to this point. Why does Heritage feel like they can't distance themselves from Nick Fuentes?
Right.
Whose name I didn't even know before Tucker put him on his show.
Basically a household name at this point.
In certain circles.
True.
But unfortunately, and this is something that I particularly care about it as a Catholic, there are a lot of young Catholic men who are watching Nick Fuentes and who part of the reason that Mike wrote this piece on Marcion was because he lives in Pittsburgh near the Franciscan University of Steubenville, big Catholic university. So he has access to a lot of young people, and he's noting this, and he wants to make clear, look, like, first of all, there's nothing new under the sun, like you were saying. This didn't come out of nowhere.
That's right.
And, no clever young person just invented this. But also, it's evil. This has been made clear time and again. And then I will add, and we know how this story ends.
Right.
And I am particularly obsessed with the Auschwitz Memorial's social media feed because every day they have photos of people who died. So whatever today's date is, July 28th. I think we're taping this. So on July 28th. Like today, there's a young girl who died at Auschwitz, who they give as much history as they have about her, which is going to be brief because she was 4 years old or
lived a brief life.
Correct.
Yeah.
They also have older people and they have families. In fact, I forget if it was today or yesterday. There were multiple children, the mother, and only the father survives. Can you imagine if your entire family was killed, your children and your wife were killed in the Holocaust, and you survived? I mean, I just can't imagine. But I think what they're doing is so important because, first of all, some of these college-educated young people are Holocaust deniers. It's not as bad as they said. Millions. Oh, come on.
Yeah.
No, can we look at some faces and, not pretend this is some kind of, grad school entertainment, that you're arguing about for fun or to make yourself feel smarter or whatever it is behind it. It's evil and we can't play with it.
Right.
And the fact of the matter is, when you look at the last century, there was so much brutality in the last century.
Yes.
And so we're talking about anti-Semitism, but I know you'll have many shows about socialism and communism as well.
Right.
And that's all being danced with and more. I mean, that's a very light way to put it, what's going on in New York City right now. And you don't have to be a history major to know how this ends. It ends with people dead.
That's right.
This ignorance of history thing, my entire life, I was a history nerd as a kid, and, you're bound to repeat it. You're bound to repeat it, kids.
Yeah.
Like, why are we being idiots here?
That saying is true for a reason.
Yeah.
Now, if you were to press someone like Tucker or like, Fuentes or anybody on the, the far left, the Gaza Solidarity.
Some of the comments Fuentes makes, I really don't even care to engage.
Yeah. Well, he's kind of a shock jock, provocateur.
Right.
But if you were to push some of these people, they would say, oh, no, this is not anti-Semitism. This is just criticism of the state of Israel. It's anti-Zionism. And so, what do you say to people who say these are two totally distinct things, and just because you're critical of Israel doesn't mean you're critical of Jews writ large?
Yeah, I think when something happens to a people like October 7th, okay, so innocent people are at home, are at a music festival. These are total innocent civilians.
Yeah.
You, first of all, to pretend that Israel is not at war at that point,
right?
I mean, you're being ignorant. And it drives me crazy that you're supposed to say, well, Israel isn't perfect. Well, it goes without saying. America isn't perfect either.
What country is not?
Yeah. Why do I have to say Israel isn't perfect?
It's an impossible standard.
No, I don't. Yeah. I don't worship at the feet of Benjamin Netanyahu or Donald Trump or I like George W. Bush better. How about him either? And so I'm old-fashioned. I'm sorry.
That's fair. We won't hold it against you.
Yeah. There are a lot of good civil society reasons that you would have loved George W. Bush.
Compassionate conservatism.
Yeah, well, we could have a whole show on that. Yes, but and also, I mean, some of his programs like the PEPFAR program.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
faith-based emphasis, and anyway, but yeah, even when conservatives find themselves having to say, well, look, Israel's not perfect, and you can say it in the most well-intentioned, and I'm sure I've said it.
Yeah.
But even there, it's like you're feeding into the anti-Semitism.
Right.
Israel is surrounded by people who don't want them to exist.
That's for sure.
And you can't just pretend this is this is like Ireland's foreign policy or defense policy.
Right.
It's just complete ignorance to suggest it's not. And am I liable to cut Israel a little more slack than some others? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because Iran's aimed at them right now. And the lack of media attention to what women in particular went through from Hamas is just unbelievable. If it was, I would think if this was if this was happening somewhere else, Oprah would be covering it. The View would be up in arms about it. Just some of the horrific treatment, and not just the women, I mean the men too, but you can do a particular kind of violence to women.
Oh, well, that footage, of, I think her name was Shawnee Luke.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember that? And then she was sort of being paraded around, and awful, unimaginable.
Well, I also remember, do you remember, I was waking up, as they were releasing hostages. We would find out that they were going to release hostages.
Right.
And the Red Cross was participating in this whole charade where Hamas would bring out the hostages they're going to release and parade them on stage. And there would be all these Palestinian men who would bring their boys to watch and to jeer at these poor and emaciated men who looked like they were coming out of concentration camps. And they were being given certificates of, surviving their captivity. And it was so disgusting. I mean, partially because we like to look away from these things, because we don't want to see things that we don't know what to do about, and that make life more complicated. It's easier to just, decide that Benjamin Netanyahu is evil and just leave it at that, and Israel is a big bully, and then to consider actually what's going on.
Right.
And look, as a Catholic, like I know that the Catholics are in Palestinian territory.
Yeah, yeah.
And last year there were rockets
Yes.
that wound up in the Catholic Church there.
That's
and,
right.
I don't know why that happened. That better never happen again. And I feel free to say that.
It's totally valid to question that.
Right.
Yeah.
But it is ignorant to pretend that Israel is not fighting for its very existence.
Part of, a big part of the show and a part of a lot of my writing has been civil society. And I know that's something that's very important to you too. And, I think it's very clear, and Robert Putnam wrote about this in 2000 with Bowling Alone.
If you have not learned anything from watching the show, Frank is Robert Putnam's biggest fan.
I'm a fanboy.
We need
to get Putnamaniac, some might say.
We need to get Putnam on the show.
And I would love to have him on the show. I think he's getting up there. But
Professor Putnam, he will travel.
Please. And so I think it's very clear that especially Gen Z is increasingly lonely. They're not participating in civil society. And, Tim Carney, I mentioned this on another episode, but Tim Carney wrote this book, Alienated America. And what he found is that the people that voted for Trump were people that weren't enmeshed in civil society, disconnected, not involved in their church or synagogue or whatever. And those are people that tend to be more vulnerable to extreme ideologies. And so I would say when I look at the Groyper movement on the far right, I think a lot of those people, 18 to 29-year-olds or whatever the age bracket is, I think a lot of them are yearning for a greater sense of belonging, for a greater sense of connection. And unfortunately, whenever you have a vacuum like that, so in this case, a dearth in meaning and belonging, you have people like Andrew Tate and Nick Fuentes and all the rest of them that seize on that. Do you think that part of this problem of Jew hatred and anti-Semitism could potentially be ameliorated if the concerns of young people are met and young people start to go to church and start to participate civically?
Well, I mean, in some of these cases, as we were discussing earlier, I mean, you are talking about people who are going to church. I mean, some of these young 20-something young men.
That's true.
Some of them are going to churches. They're coming from homeschooled families, perhaps. In some cases, not perhaps. In some cases, they are. So it's not entirely that. That having been said, yes. Obviously, we've got this situation where we have more ability to be connected than ever before, and yet people feel lonelier than ever before, right? And we were just talking offline. I was saying that I made use of. I didn't finish my story. I made use of. I'm a little slow to the uptake here. Made use of AI recently.
Yes.
I had a very practical question. I'm not the best logistically, as you know, as someone who worked with me.
Well,
I need to rely on other people.
You've gotten a lot better.
I'm still alive. Hey.
I used to schedule Catherine's Zoom webinars, but now I think you're doing it by yourself.
How about more like, what state are we in, Frank? Anyway. So I asked ChatGPT a very practical series of questions and was very impressed by how rational this was. And you don't have to deal with, frankly, human emotion. You just ask questions. And I walked away saying, I understand why people fall in love with their AI bot. And obviously, I'm saying that a little facetiously, but I'm not because of what you're saying and what you've been writing about for a few years now, Frank.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
People really, really do feel disconnected. And just the reality of life. Everybody's got issues. Everybody's got stuff they're dealing with. And maybe it's easier to deal with something that's going to tell you what you want to hear.
Yeah.
Help you with some practical problems and doesn't have any emotional baggage.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, our ideology is attractive. Yeah. But that may be something as simple as voting for Donald Trump, or something not as simple as storming the Capitol, or, there are obviously varying degrees of it. And, obviously there are people who voted for Donald Trump who were, just regular Republican voters and would always vote for the Republican. But he was, when you hear him at his shrillest, he knows he's tapping into something. And yeah, obviously it works. And yes, it's also dangerous. There is something, we have fallen into a lot of cynicism about our politics, and understandably so. But there's a danger in that, because there actually needs to be something noble about it. It needs to be a public service. It's not just naive and nostalgic to say such a thing.
Right.
I keep saying things like, if America 250 means anything, I'm actually using it particularly. I'm very much up in arms, and I hope you do a show about this, about New York State and assisted suicide.
Yeah.
And we've got nuns who have to go to court to say, hi, we care for terminal cancer patients, and we're not going to kill them, even if New York State says we have to.
That's extreme now, by the way, to say that.
To say that, a Catholic institution run by nuns, like
radicals.
Quite literally.
Radicals.
That they shouldn't be mandated by the state to tell their patients how to go about killing themselves.
Yeah.
Getting a prescription for suicide. But yeah, we celebrate Independence Day. We're celebrating, what is America 250? What is this about? It's about these fundamental issues of freedom and decency. Our democratic republic doesn't work without virtue.
Yes.
And that's why it's important to speak about issues that are the opposite of virtue.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you said, I think, a key word there, which is freedom. And I think freedom is inextricably linked to the classical liberal project that our founders believed in. And it seems to me that both, the new right, or whatever, the paleo conservative right, or whatever they're called now, post-liberal, I think J.D. Vance uses post-liberal a lot. Both that segment of the right and the sort of, progressive DSA left seem to be disillusioned by liberalism, small L liberalism, and are increasingly illiberal. And that's where I think you start to see these pernicious ideologies like anti-Semitism resurface. I guess, what would you say to a young person that goes, I have not been served well by, liberalism properly understood. It's time for something newer, more radical, whether it be Fuentes on the right or Hassan Piker on the left. What would you say to that disillusioned young person?
Well, and there are other iterations in the middle. I mean, of that. Like, you have this integralist strain among Catholics, where.
Could you explain that?
So I'm not going to do it justice at all.
Sure.
But my cocktail version of explaining it is essentially creating a theocracy.
Right.
I mean, it's rejecting pluralism.
Yes.
And again, maybe it's because I grew up in New York City, but never dawned on me that we could do anything other than pluralism.
Yeah. Well, let me tell you that, not to cut you off,
go ahead.
The Beckett Fund, that was easily the coolest gala I've ever attended.
That's right. I remember how impressed you were.
Oh my God!
When you went to that dinner,
Hasidim and then Greek Orthodox, and everybody's totally a believer in pluralism.
And the founder of the Beckett Fund for Religious Liberty, Kevin Hassan, Seamus Hassan, he wrote a book on the right to be wrong. Like, he will defend your right to believe some lunatic thing about religion that he thinks is lunatic, but that's your right.
That's right.
To believe it. And it's your right to not believe in God. I think you're wrong. I will try to convince you otherwise, but you have every right to believe that there's no God.
Right.
That's what America is. And again, do I want to convince you otherwise? Yeah. And Frank does believe in God, believe me.
It's true.
But pluralism, you explained to me how I remember at one particular time when the integralists were having a moment, it was June, and it was June in New York, which means pride flags and
that's right.
drag queen story hours. And
totally ubiquitous all over the place.
Everywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, I shouldn't say, but in certain areas, I remember.
Including churches,
including Catholic churches.
Yeah. That to me is totally confounding.
As it should be.
Yeah.
As it should be.
For you, I can't imagine,
you get to a point where nothing is shocking, and yet things still are shocking.
It becomes an eye roll.
Well, I wouldn't. No. It's more like it's almost like a sword to the heart a little bit.
Right. But one that you're fairly used to at this point.
Correct. It gets your heart gets numb after a while.
That's right.
But actually more so, it speaks to the level of confusion, and I also think what you were talking about, the question that you asked, the disillusionment.
Yes.
Young people, it's not just liberalism, it's institutions. It's, even young people, I think, I consider myself a conservative.
Yeah.
But I don't know what all these other labels are. Although we had a cover story, Ramesh Ponnuru explains the new right to a youth in the last issue. But I'm a simple person.
Well, it's like how music has a million subgenres.
Yeah.
That's kind of what conservatism has become.
I guess, right. You have country music, but then you have bluegrass, and you have, anyway, and you have Taylor Swift. And was she ever country? Anyway.
That's for the next episode.
Yeah, I guess so. But yes, rightfully so, young people feel like they were not served by my generation, the generation. Yeah, my generation would blame the baby boomers.
Right.
But for time immemorial, people would say we want to leave it better to our children.
That's right.
And it does seem like maybe sometime in the 60s or so, people stopped saying that. And so young people have a right to be mad.
Absolutely.
That having been said, I don't think the answer is you have to blow everything up.
Yeah.
I think it's actually it's something Pope Benedict talked about. He talked about the church getting smaller and purer. And by pure, it doesn't mean like ethnic cleansing or something.
Right.
He means simpler, not necessarily owning all these big bureaucracies. Remembering, if I use a Christian as an example, but we can use the Old Testament. Like if you just lived by the 10 Commandments, that's not a bad way to operate,
Right.
If you got the New Testament, if you lived by the 10 Commandments and the Beatitudes, it's, you want that person as your neighbor.
Yeah, that's a good foundation.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so rather than look at, I don't like the Catholic Bishops' Conference or, in the press release about whatever.
Right.
How about just going back to the Beatitudes? And so rather than, latching onto whatever the cool thing is, or integralism or anti-Semitism, and I'm not saying they're the same thing.
Right.
By any stretch.
Right.
How about just going back to Christ? What are the prophets? Let's just go back to basics, because that's what's been lost. G.K. Chesterton had that famous "What's wrong with the world?" question, and the answer is me. That's what he said.
Right.
Like if you start with you, if I start with me, like actually that's the only thing I can control.
Right.
So,
that's right.
That actually would probably add years to my life too, because I wouldn't be worried about, fixing the mayor of New York and
Right.
Right.
Catherine Lopez, thank you very much for joining me.
Thanks, Frank.
I'd love to have you back on.
Of course.
We'll do a lighter topic next time. Where can people, I'm told you have a newsletter. Where can people sign up?
So go to nationalreview.com and the Lifeline newsletter. It's a weekly pro-life newsletter, and with news and commentary and basically one-stop shopping is the goal. So you don't have to go fishing things out yourself. And I'm at Catherine Lopez, Kathryn, on X, Twitter, whatever we call it.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Catherine.
Thanks.
And we'll see you next time on the Frank Forum podcast.